I had a pamphlet from my endocrinologist's office, and all that said was eat 15 grams of carbs before sports. I'm like, it's not helpful.
Going really fast on my inline skates, this is the best feeling in the world. But when I do that, my blood sugar is dropping like a stone. That kind of sucks because either you don't go or you need to.
We have to figure out how our bodies react to different types of exercise at different types of day. Generally, what I do is...
Hey everyone, welcome to the Diabetes Unlocked podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Christelle, and between us, we have over 60 years of experience living type 1 diabetes.
And in this episode, we're diving into a big topic, exercise and diabetes. We'll talk about how different types of physical activity affect us, what exactly we do to prevent our blood sugar from spiking or crashing during workouts, and we'll share a number of practical tips we swear by that make our exercise a lot easier. So let's get into it.
Yes. So Tom, did you work out today?
No, I didn't. I worked out yesterday. I was in the gym. I didn't work out today, and I will not be working out today or tomorrow because I had my Eversense CGM removed from my arm today, and I should not lift weights for 5 days. So I have to take it easy. I can go for a run maybe. What about you?
Taking it easy? Going for a run?
Yeah. Well, I should not move my arm too much, so to let it heal properly. So I can run, I can walk. That's okay. That's easy. What about you?
Well, I mean, no. Also, we're in different time zones, so I almost just got out of bed. I am a morning exerciser, though, and I think this is a really exciting episode for me, I think, because exercise is kind of how I started in the diabetes world. I started talking about exercise and diabetes because I found it really challenging, and I couldn't find any resources online, so that's why I created them, and that's why I started talking about that back in 2015-ish. So it's been a good 10 years talking about exercise on the internet. That's exciting. But yeah, no, I do have a routine though. I like to go to the gym. I think the gym is a lot of fun. Do a lot of weight training. I think weight training is a lot of fun. So that's one of the reasons why I do it. And I also do some level of cardio. I'm not a runner. I will go for a run once in a while. And every time I do it, I'm like, why did I do this? I do not like this. Why are we running? My body, the funny thing is, you mentioned how do we manage our blood sugars when we do exercise? And I think that's why most people tune into this episode overall. And I think a lot of people, when they reach out to me, is predominantly because their blood sugars drop when they do certain type of exercise. We're going to talk about exercise and how it impacts your body because some of it will actually make your blood sugars go up. And for me, and I know this is not normal, but this also just underlines a real difference. For me, going for that run will actually make my blood sugars go up. I'm assuming that's not the thing for you, Tom.
No. For me, it's the other way around. When I go for a run, my blood sugar usually drops. But I agree with what you said. Any sort of physical activity or working out or running, it's sort of challenging when you live with diabetes. At least for me, it's always been. And I've always been quite active person. I used to play basketball at a reasonable level. I know you did play basketball too. But when I was younger, I played actually at quite a high level. And it was always a challenge for me because especially with basketball, you go into practice and you practice. And when I practice, it's cardio sort of activity. I know that I don't need a lot of insulin. I need to eat maybe a little bit for my blood sugar not to drop too low because during practice, I would sometimes go low and I wanted to avoid that. But during a game, on a game day, I would be like all pumped up and there would be adrenaline and my blood sugar would actually be acting completely different from practice. Plus, sometimes I didn't really play a lot. I was just sitting on the bench and I didn't really know if I will play the whole game or if I'll sit on the bench out of the game. So to plan around this was always sort of difficult. And I think basketball is a team sport and you want to be a strong member of the team and you feel like you don't want to mess things up for everybody. And it's just a challenge when your blood sugars are high. You don't really play that well. At least that's what I was. So that's why I find it challenging and really a topic that took me a lot of time to sort of master.
Well,
But you said you don't like running. I find it really interesting that you like to go to the gym and not like running because I don't really like gym. I go there, but more it's a necessity for me. It's not like something that's super enjoyable for me. So what do you like so much about it?
Well, it's funny. It's like you, I've been active most of my life. Growing up in Denmark means I was always on a bicycle. I played basketball when I was younger, like you did. I was in that good. I love the sport. And then I started going to the gym fairly early, like 17, I think, or something like that. So what I like about going to the gym is I like weight training, like pushing my muscles. I like the satisfaction of lifting something heavy. So for me, that gives me joy. As for just, I do other types of cardio. I want to point that out. So cardio also, just we're throwing out these words. Cardio is activity where you get your heart rate up. So it's elevated heart rate. For the most part, it's like a steady elevated heart rate. So I do dance classes, which for me is a boatload of fun. It is challenging. It's not your grandma like dance class. It's one of those that really, we jump around for an hour. So there's a lot of, well, actual jumping as well. So I do cardio, but for me, running just doesn't give me joy. Same thing, I tried spinning because I have a lot of friends who love spinning. I have family members who love spinning. I gave it a good go. I tried 8 different classes. They have something over here in the States called Class Pass where you can try out different studios. I gave it my all and I hated every single class. And in the end, I was like, you know what? This is not for me. I tried it. Let's move on. So for me, most of the week, so I have a schedule right now. My schedule depends on where I am in the world and if I'm traveling. But when I'm in the States, my schedule is gym, so weight training, 3, maybe 4 times a week. And then I do Pilates. I do like a reformer Pilates class, which I know is not official Pilates, but reformer. And then I do 2 of those dance classes. So that's kind of my weekly routine. So for the resistance training, I try to do some of the bigger lifts. I try to do a split between upper and lower body and just kind of like switch between that. And it gives me joy. I go to the gym, I put in my headphones, I listen to my music, sometimes very aggressive music, but that's all good. And I just enjoy my time. But I would say that the reason why I started talking about all of this in the online community was I realized how challenging, to your point, it is. For me, it wasn't about a group sport, but for me, it was like, well, when I go to the gym and I lift weights, my blood sugars react in one way. Often they actually go up or they stay flat during that workout and then they start crashing later on. And I was like, what is going on? I had a pamphlet from my endocrinologist's office, and all that said was like, eat 15 grams of carbs before sports. I'm like, it's not helpful, right? So I started to try and figure things out. And I think, just to sort of jump a little bit ahead here, what I started to figure out was, well, hey, this is a type of anaerobic exercise, which means that the heart rate comes up and then it comes down, comes up and comes down. That's weight training in essence if you lift heavy weight. That type of exercise can actually increase blood sugars during the activity, but increase your insulin sensitivity in the long run. And that's why I would see the sometimes increase during the session and then the crashes later on. Also, this is only an issue because we take insulin, right?
Yes, but just so I understand, so when you lift weights, your blood sugar will be going up, maybe slightly. And then once you're done with the workout, in the next day or 2, you are, I guess, that's what I see with me. So I'm just trying to confirm it's the same for you, that in the next few days, then like in the long term, as you said, you will be more insulin sensitive. So you will need less insulin. Otherwise, your blood sugar will go low. That's what happens with me as well. And that's sort of why I go to gym. It's not because I love lifting weights, but because I see this nice effect after it, that it's sort of easier for me to stay to just have better blood sugars, and it's easier to control my blood sugar because I feel my body reacts to insulin much better or more predictably maybe than when I don't do this gym training. I do it like max twice a week. That's what I do. I try twice a week, but it's not something I love doing. But I feel it's okay. Maybe I do this for the other reason that it really helps me with other things during the week. And sorry, I interrupted you. You were gonna say something else on top of the weightlifting, I think.
Well, no, I actually think it's a really good point to you. So first of all, the reason why I started working out more like intensely, so I worked out as an athlete for quite a few years, meaning I was there like several times a day. I was basically living to exercise because I was competing in fitness competitions. I got into all of that. I got really into fitness, not because of my diabetes. My diabetes was just a nice bonus. And that's kind of one of the things, that's how I've lived my life. I think with diabetes, pretty much since day one, is I do things because I want to do them. Sometimes my diabetes impacts my decision making, obviously, because I don't want to make life harder for myself than it has to be. But for the most part, I do things just because I want to do them. So the reason why I got really into weightlifting and bodybuilding back then was I moved to Santa Monica, and yeah, it's part of LA. And I saw all these fit people. So I think muscles are beautiful. And I saw these fit people and I was like, oh man, I want this. I want this for myself. And that's why I started. And then I just had to figure out how to make my diabetes fit that. But
Yeah.
yes, to your point, definitely resistance training, any type of anaerobic training, again, where heart rate comes up and then comes down, can really improve your insulin sensitivity. And what you might have known, so you say you work out 2 times a week, which is awesome. It's better than nothing. So everything counts, right?
Yes.
Everything counts. But I think when I saw this graph at one point from Gary Shiner, he's the one who wrote Think Like a Pancreas. And he did this really cool graph where he showed visually sort of when you exercise, your insulin sensitivity go up. So basically you need less insulin for the same amount of life. It goes up, but then it comes down again. And he kind of showed this graph where if you exercise 2 times a week, you have 2 spikes of insulin sensitivity over the week. Whereas if you exercise like every other day, you end up not having these spikes, but rather sort of just a smooth increase in your insulin sensitivity. So this was a really cool visual of, hey, if you only exercise 2 to 3 days, not only, if you exercise 2 to 3 days a week, you have to be mindful that your insulin sensitivity is going to be increased maybe the day after or longer. You have to figure out that, for your body, but the day after, but then it's going to come down again. So your insulin needs are going to actually be changing quite a bit throughout the week. Whereas if you exercise every other day, for example, you see more of a sort of a smooth insulin increase. So it's just something to be mindful. I'm not saying either of them is the right way. It's just since we manage with insulin, we have to think about these things or our life will just become a little harder.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I see exactly what you described based on that article or research that he wrote or did. The couple days after the strength training, I'm more insulin sensitive, and when I look at my history on my insulin pump, I will see for those 2 days after following the workout, or maybe the day of the workout in the afternoon and the day after, my body consumed a lot less insulin than the days before the workout, so earlier in the week. And so I guess ideal for me, or optimal or perfect to have more stable or more predictable blood sugar would be to work out every day, as you said. But I don't think I can do that right now. So I choose at least to do it twice a week. But it's a great point that it just starts operating differently when I see that when I don't go. Last week, my coach was on vacation, and I just don't have enough motivation to push myself go to the gym when he's not there on my own. So I didn't go, and I could see that right away. I was running much higher than normally, even with my closed loop system. I was running a bit higher than normally, and I had to correct a lot more, and just my body consumed a lot more insulin. So that confirms the research.
And that also means that for anyone listening so Tommy used an automated insulin pump. So it does a lot of those adjustments for you with, if you need a different basal, different background insulin, it will adjust that. But if you're on insulin pens, for me, that meant, so back when I started, I was using Levemir as my background insulin. That got discontinued here in the US and I was switched. But that one I took in the morning as well as in the evening. So what I had to do was on days where I had a heavy resistance training workout, and it could be the same if you do like sprint training or if you have a big training session, if you play like a team sport, if you had like a tough workout, the night off. So if I worked out during the day, then in the night, I would lower my Levemir insulin to prevent going low overnight.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to do. If I didn't, I would just have a low overnight. And then if I didn't exercise the day after, I might start to increase my Levemir at night back up. So for me, it was a lot of day-to-day management. And that really worked for me in order to stabilize my blood sugars, because I'm not okay with having low blood sugars every other night. I mean, I would rather adjust my insulin. So I think what I do it myself because I'm self-managed, but I think having a conversation with your medical team about, hey, how do I adjust my insulin for workout days is super important.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like most of the people struggle most during the cardio type of workout. So not going to the gym, we're talking about gym and strength training, but I don't know how many people do that. I can imagine just looking at the people on the street, like not everyone goes to the gym like every other day. But I think what people do a lot more is the cardio activity, because that's not only going to the gym, that's just walking or hiking, or doesn't need to be running. It's just cleaning the house. It's like all these things are exercise in a way, and those, for myself, those are actually more difficult to manage from my blood sugar perspective, but also more enjoyable. Like I just enjoy more these sort of activities. I love to go on inline skating, so rollerblading, I think in the US, and it's just like something I genuinely love. When it's a sunny day, when you have like you go on a trail, it's like along the river, and it's smooth tarmac. There's not a lot of people because it's on a work day in the afternoon, and I can get out and do this and just go down the river, which is like a little bit downhill. I'm just like gliding and like going really fast on my inline skates. This is the best feeling in the world. But when I do that, my blood sugar is dropping like a stone. So it's something I have to plan for a little bit ahead. And the same happens when I vacuum clean at home or when I go shopping. It's also cardio. It's maybe not that intense as inline skating, but it's the same kind of thing. And that always causes more trouble for me, because when I go low, it's just more trouble because I have to stop and I have to deal with it. I have to stop whatever I'm doing. I have to deal with it, compared to when I'm in a gym and my blood sugar spikes. I can still finish the workout. So what do you think about that? How do you approach that? I'm looking for some tips from you, what I can do to make it easier for me.
I'm sure you're already doing stuff, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that I hear a lot is I can't exercise because I live with diabetes, which breaks my heart, just being like really into exercise, because yes, we can. But to your point, you said the word planning. Unfortunately, when it comes to insulin and cardiovascular activity, we have to plan. We have to. So whenever you do anything, and I love that you pointed out, it's not just about going for a run. It's not about pulling on the spandex, going to the gym. It is also everyday activity. It's walking, it's playing with your kids, it's gardening, it's cleaning, it's all these things. So what do? You have to plan for it. The reason for it is basically when we do this kind of activity, our body will pull out glucose from our bloodstream a little bit more aggressively than if we're just sitting around. So basically our insulin sensitivity gets heightened while we do these things. So there's two things. I would say there's two levers. You can pull insulin or you can push carbohydrates. So that's kind of like one of the two levers we have to work with. And I prefer to pull insulin, meaning I prefer to adjust my insulin before cardiovascular activity. Also just because I hate the idea of having to eat when I'm not hungry or if my body doesn't necessarily need more fuel aside from blood sugars. So ideally for me, I would reduce my insulin before cardio. Sometimes I have to add it back in after, but that's kind of like a side note. And then there's these situations where I've just eaten dinner, I take my insulin, I'm hanging out, and then my husband and I look at each other and go, let's go for a walk. Let's go for an evening walk. If I do that, this is not a planned walk. If I just go, I will most likely have a low blood sugar. So for those situations, I often have to eat or at least bring enough glucose with me to, take care of a potential probably will happen low. So it's also about planning, I think.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of sucks, because when you're in the situation, like you already have all that insulin on board, you already inject it, you cannot take it away. It's there. There's two options. Like either you don't go, so you tell your husband, I'm not going right now because I would have low blood sugar, and that's not ideal. Like most of the time, we don't want to ruin the experience of everyone else because we had that insulin on board, right? Or you need to eat. Like there's nothing else you can do. So when you have something that is more planned, like let's say your husband doesn't surprise you right after dinner when you have huge bolus already in your bodies. I think you mentioned in one of the previous episodes that you like to go hiking, or you just hike a lot. And I saw on Instagram your 10,000 step challenge you did like a couple months ago. Every day, 10,000 steps, 15,000, 17,000 steps, 20,000. I was on like 6,000, 7,000. But this was planned, I guess, because you were doing this sort of challenge. So how did you plan for it during that time?
Yeah. Yes, so I walk a lot. I wouldn't really call it hiking right now because I live in southern Florida and everything's just flat. And to me, that's not hiking. Hiking, I need to be in a mountain of some sort. But that's a different point. So I go for a lot of walks, and given the weather here also means that I can actually go out and do that in the wintertime, and it's pleasant. So how do I plan for that? It kind of depends on a few things. I would say it depends on time of day. I think that one is really important because I am way more, like most people, insulin resistant in the morning, meaning that I need more insulin to cover carbs and hormones in the morning than I do in the afternoon. Very normal. A lot of us do that. So that means going for a walk in the morning, actually, for me at least, and I think for a lot of other people, reduces the risk of a low blood sugar because you're just more insulin resistant. So, but generally what I do is in the mornings, my morning routine for morning walk is I eat. I take maybe, I think, an 80% insulin shot before a walk. So I reduce it by 20% because I don't want as much insulin in my body while walking, because walking, again, is going to improve my insulin sensitivity. It's going to pull that glucose out of my bloodstream more aggressively, which can lead to a low blood sugar. Also, my walks are usually like 2 hours, which is how I get to all those steps. So when you walk for that long, it's just going to, you don't need as much insulin. If you have a lot of insulin on, you're going to go low. So that's my strategy for that. If it's in the afternoon, and if I've eaten before a walk, I will reduce my insulin even more, maybe down to 50%.
And
again, I
sorry,
do it,
in the morning when you do it in the morning, I just want to jump in. So you said you would take 80% of your insulin in the morning, but are you talking about your long-lasting insulin or pre-meal insulin, like before breakfast?
That's a good clarification. So I use MDI, multiple daily injections. So the only real lever I have when it comes to insulin is my rapid-acting insulin, so my mealtime insulin. Because as I talked about before, my long-acting, I used to do morning and evening, now only do morning. That one is kind of like set. That's my background. That is doing its thing. So for me, it's mainly the mealtime insulin. I find, which I find is, there's a lot of find there. I find it that when you're on MDI, if your basal, if your background insulin is set correctly for you, if it's titrated correctly for you, exercise does not really impact it. Whereas the rapid-acting insulin, so the mealtime insulin, is going to be very impacted by exercise, if that makes sense. So if I go out for a long walk only with my background insulin, with my basal insulin, the risk of a low blood sugar is minimal to non-existent for me.
Okay, understand. So I'm asking because I actually have it. I'm different in this respect. So I am on insulin pump right now. So that's a different story. But when I was on MDI, if I have my long, background insulin fine-tuned and I go for a walk or run for 2 hours, I would definitely go low. For sure, within 45 minutes, I would go low. So for me, and I think that doesn't mean that my dose was wrong, because on those days without the 2-hour hike, I would not go low. So I just know that I'm a little bit different, and that's why I was asking, because I thought you were asking about long-lasting insulin, but you don't really touch it when it comes to your walks. You only touch, or you only adjust the pre-meal insulin, let's say, that you do in the morning before breakfast. But that also means that you're not doing the walk in a fasted state. You're doing it after to your breakfast or in the AM, right? Because some people I know, they do it before breakfast, because they say that's even easier because you have like no rapid-acting insulin on board before breakfast. I know some people do it that way.
And that's something you have to test out for yourself, because when I do, so first of all, I really want to feed my body. I want to make sure my body is fed for the activity that I'm doing. So I'm thinking about it maybe still like an athlete. But the other thing is that from a blood sugar perspective, for me, it's not easier. For the most part, if I do fasted cardio in the morning, my blood sugars will start to go up because of hormones. And so if I do fasted, I mean, I'm not eating, I'll often still do a little bit of insulin. Because if not, I'm going to be walking out of the gym with a 260 milligrams per deciliter, which is, how much is a minimal per liter? A lot.
This is 14 millimole, or
Thank you.
A little bit more.
You have the math down faster than me. Thank you. So way high blood sugar, right? So I think ultimately we have to figure out how our bodies react to different types of exercise at different times of day. And when you do that, when you find that formula for you, I do think it becomes easier. But I think saying that we're all going to react in one way, back to your point, is not, she's not right, right? So in general, people see blood sugars drop when they do cardio. in general. But again, then we have the weirdos like me whose it goes up when I go for a run or if I do it faster, right? So there's going to be times where I don't fit the patterns or you don't fit the patterns. So again, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but I think structure is the way to figuring this out, right? Do the same type of activity. If it's walking, do the same walk, do it at the same time with the same amount of food in your belly and same amount of insulin, see how it goes. I don't think you need more than like 3 data points of doing the activity for 3 times. Then you'll kind of know, is this working or not? Then you can make a little note somewhere, and then your formula for going for a walk in the morning is going to be, reduce your insulin or eat an apple or something.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I would love for everyone. I had one experience I wanted to mention because I do a little bit of coaching. I think you've done some coaching. You coached people with diabetes before, and I have had a few people that I coached. There was one guy who reached out to me because he watched my YouTube videos and he was struggling because he was recently diagnosed, and he really, like, his passion was basically, I think, surfing and whitewater rafting, if I remember correctly. And I think these activities are super physically challenging, and he was really struggling he was kind of afraid to do this with diabetes because he tried a couple of times and always went low. And when you're in the water, it's like really scary when you're in the water and your blood sugar goes low, and then you feel the hypo hits you. And so I think maybe it needs more than 3 times for someone who is just diagnosed. But I would say, it's always better to be prepared, like have glucose tablets on you or something with the fast carbohydrates, and just maybe play it safe. When this is this kind of activity that's not 100% safe, where you're in the water and there's no one around you that can help you right away, I would encourage everyone to still try it, but maybe aim for a little bit higher blood sugar, just to be safe, because the low blood sugar is more immediate danger, and I would hate for someone to be discouraged from something that they love doing just because of the 2 negative experiences. Or maybe starting a little bit more on the safer side of things with a little bit higher blood sugar when it comes to these cardio activities. That's a tip I gave him, just like try again, but be prepared, do a short session and maybe aim for a little bit higher blood sugar, so you have a little bit of cushion, so that you're not too concerned, and see if it goes or not. And then it's possible to make it longer next time and more aggressive, maybe with insulin if needed. That's what so I just wanted to mention that. I don't know, I wonder why I said that.
No, you're talking
I guess
safety.
just that the main thing is like the safety, and also if something is your passion, then I think patience can bring some success, but it might take just more repetitions than just 2 or 3 if it's something more challenging like this.
Yes, and to the safety component, I think that goes for all type of activity. I mean, I never leave my home without glucose.
Mm-hmm.
I would not recommend that you start hiking without glucose. I'd rather you bring too much. I say if you're nervous about exercise, maybe it's based on actually having a lot of low blood sugars every time you try. I get it. If you keep going low when you do an activity, obviously that's going to like be ingrained in you and it's going to sit in you. There's going to be a fear. So be safe. Bring enough glucose with you so that you're ready for anything. Kind of like, if you need to bring a whole backpack full of glucose, do that. I'd rather you be safe for sure. So when I talk about data points, my point is more like, well, what kind of things do I need to do to limit the risk? I'm not saying eliminate. I say limit the risk of a low if I do a certain activity. And I find that if you're very structured about it, you start to see trends faster rather than if you just like change everything every time you go out. And then at one point you go out in the morning, then you go out in the evening, then you do windsurfing, and then you do like hiking. And that's just a lot of different data points that don't necessarily tell you a whole lot, except that life can be chaotic. So it's more about finding structure and then starting to figure it out. And you mentioned coaching. I kind of don't want to advertise coaching because I don't do coaching, but I used to talk to a lot of people with type 1 specifically, or type 2s who use insulin. And what we would talk about is, well, how do you create that structure? What things should you be writing down? Because the reason why you go low is not because you have diabetes. The reason why you go low is because you inject rapid acting insulin or, insulin period. And that insulin gets hypercharged when you do certain types of exercise. If you have too much insulin in your body, you will go low. I'm simplifying things, but that's the essence of it, right? So I think, how do you then, back to the two levers, you could push carbs or you can pull insulin. So what I do, as I said, is if I have an activity where I know that I am likely to go low because my insulin sensitivity will go up during activity, like for example, a walk, I reduce my insulin. But I also think about when I reduce my insulin. And I think this is really relevant for pumps. So I want to know what you do with your inline skating, because reducing it
Yeah.
an hour before my activity makes more sense than reducing it right before, because of the way that insulin works,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Rapid onset insulin peaks
It
in
is.
about an hour and a half. I don't want to start out my activity with insulin that's peaking.
Definitely. And this is the challenge, I think, with pumps in general, with this sort of cardio activity where we have that insulin on board. Just, when you start running or riding a bike, it just starts working like crazy. Works more, it's more effective. So what I do personally, I usually try to do 1 hour before I even start doing something. I don't want to have any insulin going in my body. And there is, even on the pump, you have still two components of the insulin that I inject. Is the basal insulin that is injected every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes there's a little drop of insulin as the background insulin, and then of course if I eat, I will take a pre-meal. So with the pre-meal, I think it's the same as you do it. If I know that in 1-2 hours I will be doing some cardio activity, I just need to consider it. It's always easier to do it before the meal. That's why when I go for a run, I don't go right after dinner, but I go later on in the evening or early in the morning before breakfast, because I don't have anything from the pre-meal insulin on board. And that's like the first thing. I guess it's best to have the pre-meal insulin out of the body. And inline skating, you were asking about inline skating. I do this in the afternoon, and that's, again, I have lunch around noon, and I will go around 4 o'clock. So after work, basically, I will go, and then I know it's not the bolus, the pre-meal is not there anymore, but I need to still handle the background insulin, because that's going in my body all the time. So I sort of need to tell the pump, hey, in the afternoon we will be inline skating, so don't give me too much insulin. And the way I do it, well, let me maybe take a step back. With a commercial system like Omnipod 5 or Tandem's Control IQ, these systems have activity mode. And what this activity mode does, it's meant to be used for exercise, and normally the target blood sugar for the automated insulin delivery system is around 110 milligrams per deciliter, or slightly above, maybe. It depends on the system. But when we activate the activity mode, the system suddenly takes the target and brings it up to, I think it's 150 with most systems. Okay, it knows you're doing some activity, and it will target higher glucose. But of course, if you do it and then right away you start the inline skating, it's too late, because that basal is already there. So that's why it's important to activate the activity mode even like 1 hour. I do it 1 hour before I start skating, but it's still this for me is still too late. But I don't want to go more than 1 hour, because if I do it more than 1 hour, then my blood sugar starts going high before the activity, and I don't want that. So 1 hour for me is like reasonable. And what I do, because I use a non-commercial system, I completely shut off the delivery. Like 1 hour before the skating, I shut off the delivery, and I leave it off even during the skating. And then 15 minutes before I stop or after I stop, I turn it back on. And at that point, I actually need insulin, because I stopped skating. I'm not skating anymore. My blood sugar is good, but I know it will shoot up, because my body needs insulin, but there is no background insulin in my body when I stop. So that's where I do a little bolus, like micro bolus, to sort of catch up on that insulin that I was not taking for the past 2 hours. So I will do maybe 1-2 units even to catch up on that insulin that's sort of missing. But I definitely don't say that everyone should do 1 hour before and 2 units of extra insulin after. It's definitely different for everybody, but that's what I do. And most of the time, this is like a rule of thumb, most of the time this works. But on top of all this, I still eat extra carbs before I start. So I still eat a banana before I start skating, because it's such intense activity that none of this tweaking and messing up with insulin is not enough for me to keep me from going too low. So that's it's like a combination of things in my case.
How long do you discontinue for? How long do you shut off your pump for? Is it an hour and a half or?
Around 2 hours, probably combined like 2 hours. It depends how long is the exercise, but usually one hour and maybe 1 hour 45 minutes, or like max is like 2 hours. I think if the I ran a marathon like 10 years ago. So when I was training for a marathon, I had to do 3 hour runs. So I would not do like 3 hours completely without insulin. Or for that sort of activity, I had, let's say, 30-40% of the basal rate, because I know that I cannot go completely without it. I need some insulin, but it's relatively little for a very extended cardio activity. I don't do marathons anymore, so now it gets a bit easier. Marathon was really challenging to handle.
But yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because that's kind of a point that I think we need to hammer through, is that you can turn off your pump. You can't turn your pump off for too long. If you do that, you can end up in DKA. You can go into the diabetes ketoacidosis. You can go into DKA even with good blood sugars. If you have no insulin on board, and unfortunately with insulin, if you turn off your insulin pump for, is it 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours, you will have no insulin on board. You are at risk of going to DKA, so please don't do that. But it's interesting, because I think it's the same strategies, because you mentioned an hour before you will start making changes to your insulin delivery. Either, you can use exercise mode, or you can manually reduce your dose. So that's kind of like similar, as I said, if I eat, I will reduce my dose before. And that's usually also within that 1 hour for me. And that, again, comes back to how insulin works, right? Rapid eye insulin doesn't start to work right away. I don't want it peaking right when I start my activity, unless I'm doing an activity where I know my blood sugars usually go up. Then I would actually like it to peak at that point. So again, depending on what I do and depending on time of day, I actually don't mind the whole eating. So I want to say that I feel like sometimes we forget that we're humans. We're not diabetics first, we're humans. And it's okay to eat. It's okay to feed your body what it needs for an activity. If you see people go like hiking, biking, roller skating, who do not live with diabetes, they also sometimes eat before if they're hungry or if they feel like their body needs it.
Right.
So,
right. And I think you can also, like, one more thing that I'm not very good at this. I just eat whatever is like simple, whatever I can put in my pocket. But I think you can also think about what you will eat to kind of power your body throughout that activity. So, if you want a stable blood sugar, then glucose tablets before you start skating will never keep it stable. It will be up and down anyway. You avoid the hypo, but it will jump. But there are maybe other foods that are more complex carbs that will sort of release throughout that activity, and that's something that is another like level of complexity, what you actually eat if you eat something to best support whatever you're doing. Do you want to go more into this? Because next thing I wanted to ask you is about the strength training, and sort of like get your thoughts on how you approach that, because you mentioned during that sort of activity you're going up usually.
well, I don't go up anymore because I know how to deal with it. But if I did, if I did
So
not
what do you
take
do
precautions.
to avoid? Yeah.
So, well, I mean, for the most part, I do. So I used to do my resistance training in the evening, and then I would do, so when I was, as I said, I was trained like an athlete. So meaning I would get up really early in the morning, I'd do cardio, I would go to work, because I went into an office back then, and then I would do my resistance training in the evening. I had a very boring life. I think everyone else would say that. For me, it was awesome. I loved it. But how I fuel for that is actually the same as how I fuel now for exercise. I always eat before my resistance trainings workouts, because I want my muscles, I want my body to have the fuel to be able to actually lift the things that I want to lift. And I just find that with a fat body, that's easier. So I make sure to drink a lot of water in the morning, and I eat something that has protein in it, and I eat something that has carbohydrates in it. So in the mornings, that's just my breakfast, which is eggs and like Ezekiel toast right now. So I don't really add a fat. There's some natural occurring fats in the seeds and the bread, but I don't add a fat right now. I could, because that does slow down the digestion, but the main part for me is to get my proteins and my carbs before that resistance training workout. And I usually then work out about an hour after breakfast. So that means that my insulin is actually at its most potent and it's the most effective when I go into the gym, and that just works for me. After that session, sometimes I still have to take a little bit more insulin, just because now I'm not running around in a gym anymore. I'm sitting in front of a computer on my bum, and I need a different level of insulin when I was sitting here. But for those morning, for that breakfast, I take full dose of my insulin. I don't dial it back. I take full dose. I go to the gym. I usually like warm up for 5-10 minutes. And then I do my lifts. And that formula works for me. So that's my formula for exercise in the morning when it's resistance training. When I go do my Pilates, first of all, I walk there. So that means I have a 20-minute walk. I do the class, which is a little bit more endurance than lifting, and then I walk back. For that, I do have to reduce my insulin a little bit because it's a different type of activity. It's more cardio-ish.
Yeah.
The word cardio-ish? Yeah. Well, not really.
Cardio-ish. I think for this discussion, it's perfect. I think it's a perfect term.
It is a word now. So that's kind of my routine for that, but I will still eat before. Again, that's also because I think of it from more of a performance perspective, and I just think it works for me.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I sort of see similar trends with my exercise when I'm in the gym. I don't Pilates, but it's like I know what it is. I mean, I've tried. I've been to a few sessions, but it's not something that I enjoyed much. But when I'm in a gym, I feel like I can see almost immediate impact of switching between different exercises. Like because with my coach, sometimes I lift weights and sometimes I do strength training, but without the weights, or it's more like endurance or more mobility and flexibility, sometimes a little bit of stretching. And I see when I'm lifting weights, my blood sugar really starts going up quite fast. I can see it on my CGM, like within 15 minutes, I really see a trend start spiking up. But when I switch to something different, like doing, for example, planking, or I don't know what else we do, like all kinds of mobility training or stretching, suddenly the blood sugar starts going up. And I don't do anything with insulin or food, but that trend can change a lot. So sometimes I see that I'm going low. I might be going low. So I just tell my coach, hey, let's do some weightlifting now. And it usually really helps. So without having to eat, I can sort of tweak that around. I noticed, and I was surprised how fast the body reacts to only the change in activity without actually eating. I was, when I saw it for the first time, I couldn't believe that it's a thing, but it really is. Can you also see these sort of differences when you switch from one thing to another, or not? Because you have your MDI, so I think you have different setup in your body that I have. But I really see major difference.
I mean, I would say I see the difference from workout to workout rather. Although if I start with like a big lift, so people get like, what the heck is she talking about? So like a deadlift. So deadlift, you have the Olympic bar, you bend down, grab it, you stand up. So that's basically, if I do that, if I do like in the 8-rep range, for example, so I'm lifting as heavy as I can, that type of exercise will impact me very different from if I'm doing like bicep curls. Also, I'm hating on bicep curls because I think it's a little bit of I don't do them that often. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Biceps curl is this?
Yes, it's where you just bend your elbow and you move the dumbbell towards you. It's a very small muscle, basically. Whereas if you do a big lift, meaning that, for example, a deadlift, you're using pretty much your whole body. So you're activating a lot more muscles. So those two type of exercise will impact my blood sugars differently, especially if I'm doing like a lot of them. So I do think, yes, I do think they impact me differently. It's interesting also what you're saying is because basically you're saying that you're asking your coach to help you do the exercises that are best for your blood sugars in the moment. And I think that's a really interesting point. I have talked to other people who do something similar. They're like, yeah, if my blood sugars start to drop, I go do sprints on the treadmill. It's like, it is so interesting. At first, it's like counterintuitive, but it makes sense because that's anaerobic training. So sprints be like you run all that you can for like 15, 30 seconds, and then you take a breather, and then you repeat. Does that type of training, again, can actually make you more insulin resistant in the moment, right? So you can sort of blunt that blood sugar drop. And it's just a fascinating way.
My coach is not that happy about it because he's like you, like everything about structure. He's like, today we're doing legs and tomorrow we're doing upper body. And I'm like, no, my blood sugar is going down. So he's not a big fan of this. And especially when I started with Omnipod, which is the insulin pump, that's a patch pump. I have it here. So I always have to have it somewhere on my body. So I cannot just take it off before the workout because it's a 3-day system. And sometimes he tells me, okay, let's do this exercise. I'm like, no, I can't do it because I cannot lie on my belly right now because I have my pot there, and I cannot just do this sort of movement because I will just it just not be comfortable. He thinks it's an excuse, but I already explained to him, no, it's not an excuse. I live with type 1 diabetes. This is you have to respect that. We have to do different exercise. So he's always making fun of me, but I already like sort of worked around it and explained to him everything. And now I also convinced him to record me on video when I work out, so I can then put it in my YouTube video, the footage as a B-roll. So he's now all into it.
He's your talk.
Oh, knows everything about type 1.
Oh, right.
Anyway,
I worked with a lot of not a lot, that's not true. I worked with 2 trainers in the past, and I think it's challenging to find one who understands diabetes. So what I decided to do was just figure it out on my own. And I'm like, you're just going to tell me the exercises, it's fine. I'm going to work around it. I do find they always been very understanding of like low blood sugars, high blood sugars, having to do finger sticks or checking your CGM or whatever you have to do. But I do find that you often have to explain it to them. Also, they're not specialized in diabetes care necessarily.
Yeah. And are there other people in your gym? Because you called yourself a gym rat yesterday because you said you're in the gym almost every day. Everybody knows you. Are there also people with diabetes in your gym that you sometimes train with? Or is this not really a thing in the place where you go to?
So right now I work out at a smaller gym. I've seen people with CGMs on their arms, but now there's also biosensors. I don't know anymore. I don't necessarily go up to people anymore. I used to do that in the past. I'd be like, hi, Diabody,
Okay.
you're wearing a sensor. I don't really do that anymore. I used to work out when I lived in Santa Monica at Gold's Gym, which is like one of the original bodybuilder gyms. Arnold Schwarzenegger still comes there. There's a lot of like big muscular people there. And there was actually, it's quite a large gym. And there were other people from the diabetes community who would come work out there. And some people would come up and say hi once in a while. It's always fun to sort of connect with with the same interests. Have I worked out with anyone of them? No, I used to work out by myself. I'm a very antisocial person when it comes to my workouts. Again, for me, it's my me time. It's my meditation. I put in my headset and I'm kind of like just doing my thing. It's funny. I often say my husband and I work out together, meaning that we go in the front door together and then he goes do his thing. I go do my thing. And then when we're ready to leave, we leave. So that's the level of working out together.
But that's okay.
My me time.
That's okay. I was just curious because the gym I go to is like a private gym and there's not a lot of people. So I never met anyone with a sensor there or anything like that. And I don't expect my coach to understand all the nuances of type 1 diabetes. I was not my goal to find a coach that can be also a mentor or like a coach for my type 1. It's just funny that I came up with these excuses. That's why I mentioned it. And I would, if I see someone in our gym with a CGM, I would definitely go talk to them because they would be like first person ever. And I would be super excited to start a conversation, but they would probably think I'm a bit weird.
No, I'm pretty sure they'll appreciate it. I do think so. I mean, most people do. I will say, one thing is as I mentioned, I do a dance class like twice a week. For that dance class, the instructor, also I've been going to the same class for 2 years now. She knows I live with type 1 diabetes. She knows because I told her. I also told her, hey, sometimes you'll see me go check my phone. I'm not checking text messages. I'm checking in CGM. At one point, she's like, you're eating in class? I was like, yes, it's a low blood sugar situation. So I kind of explained that to her and she's like, oh my gosh. And she's very cool. She's like, should I have something up front for you if anything happens? So she was like, how involved do you want me to be? And we had a conversation about it. And I actually think that's fair, even if you don't go to the same class. But if you like classes, even if you're in a new class, just go up to the instructor and say, hey, I have my gear with me because I live with diabetes. If you see me eating or if you see me checking my phone, this is the reason. I think that's actually a really, really good idea also for a safety perspective. And also let them know which kind of involvement you need. Like, do you need them to come check on you? Do you need them to not do anything? I don't need her to do anything. I just need her to know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. She was very sweet. She's like, should I have chocolate? I was like, that sounds really nice, but no, thank you.
Yeah, you should have told her. Just bring me a piece of chocolate for every
For every class, I'll start with a
Yeah.
big box of chocolate. Bring it.
I like this. I like this Swiss one with orange and sea salt.
You mean I should have put in an order?
Yes, 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 exactly.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I think another thing when it comes to exercise that we haven't really talked about, because I tend to exercise when in set again. I'm turning out. I sound Mrs. Structure over here. I'm doing it at certain times, and I kind of have my life set up so that it works for my workout. I also find that structure for me means that I do it. I get up in the morning, I put on my gym clothes without thinking about it because that's the plan for the day. And then I go to the gym. Whereas if I'm like, I might go later, I might not go later, it usually doesn't happen because it's not. So for me, a set routine is really helpful. Also brings me joy to go. I think a lot of people who are starting out is like, well, how do I get started? My point is always, well, you have to, you don't have to, but it can help to establish a routine. So maybe it's going for a walk after dinner or after meals if you have the time for it. Or bike ride or go play basketball or jump rope, whatever, do a little dance at home. Starting to establish those routines can make it easier to get started. And it might not be fun at first, but it can become fun or you become like entertaining, or you can at least see the benefits that it gives you. Maybe like you mentioned, Tom, that it benefits your blood sugars. Or, I mean, exercise also has a lot of other benefits outside diabetes, right?
Yes.
Everything.
So I have to be honest, and I have to be honest, me going to the gym and lift weights twice a week, it's not the only motivation is not blood sugar or, like better control. There is also the element of it would be really nice to have six pack in summer. Of course, I don't have six pack, but at least that uni pack that was there, like nice and round belly, transformed to something a little bit closer to a six pack, and that element, like I also like, to be completely honest, that also feels good. And another thing that feels good is walking out of the gym. Usually when we record this podcast is after my gym. So I do gym, then I eat lunch, then I take a quick power nap, and then we record. Today I didn't have it, and I felt like my energy levels before this were not where it is after the gym. So it has this positive element of having like really good energy for the afternoon and probably in the evening as well. And so all these things come together, I think, and I see, okay, it's beneficial for me, but of course I don't always enjoy being in pain and doing this deadlift or whatever it's called. But it's a positive thing. I think it's not like we're telling everyone to, you have to work out when you live with diabetes. I think everyone can make their own choice, like what they want to do, or if they want to work out, like what's the right exercise. For someone, it's dancing or Pilates or inline skating or basketball or whatnot. I think basketball is really the most challenging one. It was for me because of that team sport element. I didn't know if I will actually sit or I will play, and that difference between match and practice, it was just kind of difficult. But everything else I think was great, and I found a way how to manage that. And whatever people do is, I'm sure, beneficial for the body and brain, the mind and the body.
Yeah, everything counts. I mean, there are general guidelines. The general guidelines in the States, like 150 minutes a week. So that's on average like 20 minutes a day. Cleo said that more than once before. That one just rolled off the tongue. But that's about 20 minutes a day. But it doesn't have to be 20 minutes in one go. It would be like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. So if people are starting
150 minutes
it's about
per
getting
week.
started. Say what now?
Is it 150 minutes per week? Is the US guidance?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I thought I can get there probably.
Yeah, and I know there's also people who are so one thing is sort of, you're talking about the preventive measures, you're talking about improving insulin sensitivity. I know there's also a lot of people who are like, well, if my blood sugars are high, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to do something active. I'm going to clean the house because I know my blood sugars are going to drop. And I think it's a completely fair way of using exercise, but I do think we should like highlight some of the risks, because there are situations where you should not be exercising. And that is mainly, is it 250 milligrams per deciliter, which is how many millimole per liter?
That's around 14, I think.
Thank you. dang, you're faster than me. So I'm just going to default from you to you for 250. And if you have ketones, that's the main thing. If you're having ketones, you have to be really careful with exercise because it could be really dangerous. So there's some different guidelines, but I would say if you're running ketones, period, no matter exercise or not, and you don't know why, I think go to the ER. Like, don't do something dumb. Seek medical attention. Be safe. If we can say be safe every 10 minutes during this podcast, that would make me feel good. Because that's got to be like the main thing. It's just you guys be safe because exercise can be really good for you, but it can also injure you.
Yeah. And just for full transparency, I'm not doing like exact recalculation of the numbers of milligrams per deciliter. I just shoot it off the hip because since I grew up in Europe, in a country where we use those millimoles, I know, what is a good millimole, what is too high for exercise, and what is too low. And I lived in the States, and I use some German CGMs that have milligrams per deciliter. So I'm just like familiar with both units, but I don't do exact recalculation, times 18 or divided by 18, which is how it'll the exact measurement. So when you say 250, it's not exactly 14 millimole. It's probably, it's 250 divided by 18, which will be like 13.7 maybe or something. But I just estimate it, it's the same when I put carbs on my plate. I sort of eyeball it and estimate it. I do the same. So please don't feel bad that you cannot do quick math because I cannot do either.
No, it's funny because I used to think in millimoles per liter, but I only think in milligrams per deciliter. So it's fine. I just wanted to point out sort of the risk and when to not exercise. That's just how it is because it can be dangerous. But overall, I think using exercise as part of your diabetes management is fine if you want to do that. Also, I hope that people's takeaway here is that exercise doesn't necessarily have to be in the gym. It doesn't have to be wearing gym clothes even. It's any activity that gets your heart rate up and doing it in a structured way. Then it gets labeled as exercise.
Right. But it can be in the shopping mall. It can be even in a bedroom. I hope nobody will blame me for making inappropriate comments. Like on one of my latest videos, I said some bedroom jokes and someone didn't like it. So maybe we should edit it out. But you can do exercise everywhere. In the shopping mall, in a parking lot, anywhere, in the garden. It's not exercise, it's just physical activity, and it's great.
I did at one point, like many years ago, I was asked for input to like a fitness article about how do you incorporate more activity into your everyday life. Back to the parking lot, one of them was like, park your car really far away from the building that you're going to, which makes sense in the States because every parking lot, if you work in a corporate, not everyone, but a lot of them are really large. So even if you're going to the mall, park in the other end and then walk to the entrance. There's like, get up every hour. Again, if you're in a corporate setting, go to the water cooler, have a glass of water, walk around the cubicles a few times. If you're at home, just get out of the chair. I'm really bad at that, by the way. I tend to just get really caught up in what I'm doing. All of a sudden, 4 hours have gone. But get up every hour, walk around a little bit. If you can, go outside, get some fresh air. You can get out, do squats. You can actually do, even if you're mobility, if you're immobile and can't really move around that much, there's also a lot of exercise you can do seated, just using your upper body. So there's a lot of options, but you of course just have to work around what you have to work with, both when it comes to time and physical.
Definitely. Anything else, Crystal?
I think we got around a lot of things here. And I hope you guys also got a feel for how we ended up where we at with all our activity. And I also want to point out, if I'm on vacation, I don't necessarily go to the gym. I don't necessarily bring my gym gear when I go on vacation. I think it's really good to also take breaks and let your body rest. And I have been obsessive about exercise in the past. I definitely have. I don't think I'm there anymore. I think I'm more balanced. But I think just understanding how different types of exercise impact you means that management on a day-to-day basis becomes a little easier, not easy, but a little easier. And it also enables you to actually do the things that you want because you know that there's these two levers that you can pull. And if you really want to go for that walk after dinner, then bring glucose or eat a little bit of a snack before you go because you can do it.
Yeah. And if you want to have big dinner, then you can do it the other way around. Have the big dinner that normally would spike blood sugar, but go after for a walk after it, right? You can pull the two levers in both directions. Crystal, I think this was great conversation. I learned a lot from you again, and I'm always interested how you do different things, what your structure is around all these things, because you're so good at talking about, all these things that you do and why you do them. And it's really good because I'm not that structured and I don't think about it too much. I just do it, and it's nice to hear it from you and to kind of connect the dots. So I think it was great conversation. Thank you. And I just want to let our viewers know that we really want to hear from you. And if exercise is or is not part of your life, let us know in the comments, and also let us know what you like to do and why. And if you have any tips, tricks that work for you and your blood sugar management around exercise, or what keeps you motivated, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know. If you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe to our channel or podcast, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. So thanks again, and see you next time. Ciao.
Bye.